I started in questions, but it was too late. I wanted to know the 2 hours.
We're missing a few people. We're going to get started. Some people here have to, well, a lot of you have to leave somewhat early. So leave when you need to.
Non-disruptively.
Very good. I passed out these cards. These cards are for if you have questions or scenarios that you'd like to pose to the group. And one of the reasons that we're not trying to stop you from asking a verbal question, but a lot of times we have more questions than we have time to answer them, and I want to document the questions. We'll get them answered, and then we'll publish the results. So if you pick a couple of your favorite questions, there's probably going to be a lot of duplicates. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Or you could write a scenario, if it's not just a generic question. If something's happened to you and you want to know, what could I do about it? Okay? And you can either give them to me or give them to Steve as he's going to. Somebody pointed out to me that the panel's all male, and we don't know if that makes a difference in terms of dealing with disruptions. I don't know.
Makes it better.
Good for you.
Yeah, my bad, I put together the panel, but I wanted a relatively diverse set of viewpoints. We have Dean Darrell McGee, who adjudicates a lot of these issues. Okay. And Daryl Rice, who's been a faculty member, worked in the dean's office, and presumably gets lots of complaints from students, some of which may well be a faculty who's being disruptive, but in some cases, I see it as a faculty member. Julian Mirabel, who's had his own experiences dealing with disruptive students. But when we were planning this, we thought, well, let's also focus a little bit more on the positive, the notion of promoting stability. And Harvell Howard and Logan Hansen work a lot in their first year experience classes on that. And you use a book that's called
Choosing Civility.
Choosing Civility. So I thought that might be a useful perspective to add to all of this. So I emailed them and said, feel free to make some opening remarks. And then we have some questions. A few of them we got in advance and sent so they had a chance to think about them if they wanted to. Okay? Why don't we just start down there? Introduce yourself and if you have any opening remarks.
My name is Harvell Howard. I'm coordinator from AAMI, African American Male Initiative, and also the TEAM program with the Teaching and Participating Minority Students. I guess in terms of my part in disability talks, I was able to have one section out of the 12 PAW sections that was offered through the Division of Education and Student Services for all of our students. And we prescribed to this book, Choosing Civility by Pina Forney. And we basically just wanted to talk to our students about looking at civility in all walks of their lives, not just in the classroom, but that's where we taught it. And we were able to teach them different principles each week in terms of what they learned in the book and how they were actually applying it. And we would have civility checks, I call them each week, where perhaps I might walk in on a conversation that I didn't want to hear, and I would tell them that's civility. And also, perhaps I may have a guest speaker, and the guest speaker can't give the presentation. Perhaps the students are pretty excited about the speaker, so they ask them probably too many questions. And I tell them, well, that's civility in itself, because you got to recognize that there's going to need to get rude, perhaps. Just small things like that. But I think it was a very healthy dialogue, and the young man would oftentimes ask me about it in the semester. Mr. Howard, is that civility? So I felt like it was very worthwhile using the text. It wasn't too complicated for them to get through it. We were able to break it down, and we used chapters that were relevant to them. So that was my role, and I'd be willing to filter other questions in terms of civility in class.
I'm Darrell McGee, the Associate Dean of Students. Of course, many of you probably dealt with me. I hope in a positive way. My primary responsibility is the Chief Judicial Affairs Officer So I am tasked at enforcing the student code of conduct. And how we do that, our student handbook has a behavior code, which is reflective of information within the faculty handbook. And I know we won't talk specifically about classroom disruption. Our classroom disruption policy is in this handbook, but it originates from the faculty handbook. So my job is to work with the faculty member and students, because I advocate for both sides. And hopefully we can get through this. But my huge task is to make sure the university does what we say we would do. Because how we can get in trouble or fall ourselves into a legal situation is when we do what we should not have done, or do what we say we would not have done, or we do not do what we said we would do. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have to follow our policy, and we cannot add to it, and we can always amend the policy. But that's my task. So I really try to keep the peace in a proactive manner, if at all possible. And work with faculty, students, departments, however, I've been in many areas around the campus.
And you have some materials back there?
Yes, I do have a student handbook for you. I also have Keeping Yourself and Your Classroom Safe brochure. I have information on handling classroom disruption. Is an excerpt from the faculty handbook and the student handbook, and some suggestions how to do that. So there's a few items in the back, and when we get through, or doing however you want to do, you can just look back. But it's here, and the key is that we should know our policy and try to adhere to it. I think our policy is pretty good. I think faculty members years ago really did a pretty good job. They wanted to give the faculty the opportunity to manage his or her class without administration getting involved. But the process, is an ejection process. So you really must follow our policy by ejecting students whenever you feel that student is disrupted. Now, what's the beauty about this faculty policy is, get this, the definition of disruption is defined by the faculty members. Y'all understand? So
Yes, we do. Let me guess, faculty
may not
like
be
that.
what's disruptive for Dr. Rice may not be disruptive for, Dean McGee. However, it's disruptive. So one ejection, you're out of here. So, there's many ways to handle it. So we'll entertain questions.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm going to bolt at 5 o'clock sharp, so I don't mean to be rude, but I will leave it at
You'll do it.
I was going to divide my comments into two things, the little stuff and the big things, and I think the big things are probably what you're more interested in. We've had some zingers just this semester of disruptive behavior in class, out of class, and they are the toughies. The little things I'll comment on, and I don't mean to be pedantic, but I've actually had colleagues say to me things about, I have these students and I just couldn't stop talking about the classroom. And I have to confess to you that I don't understand. And that may just be, maybe that's because I'm a male, and for better or worse, students are intimidated more. But when I have colleagues that say that to me, I say, I don't understand, because the first day I'm going through the class and I get to something I call the Riot Act. And it's attendance and things like that. And then I get real sheepish looking. And I say, I'm sort of embarrassed to have to talk about this, and it's probably embarrassing to a lot of you to have to talk about this. But this is a university classroom, and I need to go through some things. So, like, if you're here with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you start paying touchy-feely, or it's, I'd say, I'm a pretty talented person. But there's sometime I'm going to explode, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say, yo! That's your one warning. And you're going to say, what? What? And I say, that's your one warning. Right? And I said, now look, talking, I understand somebody else said something and you didn't understand, so you lean across and you ask the person next to you. You say, that's not what I'm talking about. Or I said something you don't. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about is to continue the constant. Be on time. Should you come if you can't find a parking space or you burnt the kitchen down? Yeah. But if it's chronic, you're going to be in trouble. Don't leave class without telling me in advance. All right? Don't just decide it's boring and you get up and you walk out and you're going to leave, because that's going to be your one. And the second time, you're not coming back. Now, does that mean if you have an emergency, you're going to throw up, you got to go to, don't stop, don't raise your hand. Get out, go. Right? Well, I'm talking about you got to leave early to pick up your kid. Just say something at the beginning of class. No problem. I just want to know what's going on. That's all. Just tell me that. I've never had problems like that. Now, the big ones, right? People who are got serious issues that I'm sure we'll talk about. That's another matter. But the little things, I've just never, and I do. I mean, I'll be talking to be late. It's going on back there. Okay, just cool down. And I sort of purposely wait until I do explode, just for effect, because I'm not a very good actor, right? And then it's just finally, yo, what's and the other, what? Yeah, you. That's your one. And if I do it one, that's it. Never any problems the rest of the semester. So that part, I don't get it. It's just you lay down the law, you stick to what you lay down, and people behave. I don't know. That's maybe really old school. Maybe I should be wanting to have group hugs with him or something. I don't know. It works for me. So. But the tough ones, that's really, to me, they're not the tough ones. It's the student who's got, mental problems. And it's pretty clear. You don't know that.
What difference does it make to you whether or not someone's told you before they're going to leave, the class, 5 minutes before, or
civility? I expect you to be there. It's not optional in my class. You don't decide.
To me, civility is a matter of how they leave, not whether they leave or whether I know. As long as they do it quietly to not disturbing other people, I don't care. But I'm just curious.
But do you care if, one at a time for the last 10 minutes of class, one at a time, they all leave?
Doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Because once I'm down to 3 or 4 students,
We're going to run out of time here.
that's when I tell them all the test questions.
Let's come back to this.
I am Logan Hampton, and I currently serve as interim dean of students. And I want to just give you some overview structural kind of things that we are currently involved in. You heard from the discipline piece that perhaps some of you all have engaged in. But we've been proactive in dealing with this issue because, in many instances, those of us in student services, we're kind of like frogs in the pond. There is something quirky or strange is going on with pond water. The frogs are going to be the first to see it and to experience it. They grow 8 legs or something. And so, and those of us in student services, we start to get a sense of the kinds of things that are happening across the campus. And so for the last about 3 or 4 years, we've been very proactive in this area, trying to engage our students in this conversation. One of the things we did is we produced this piece on civility that just kind of talks through the kinds of things that are aspects of civility, some ways that you may behave civilly, etc. And so I just invite your attention to that. The other piece is what Harvell talked about is we chose choosing civility as one of the texts for the PEAW course. And so each year, approximately 300 students are going through that training. They are going through the aspects of civility. We're talking about respect, restraint, responsibility. That's kind of the mantra of civility from PM Forney's perspective is that we challenge students, first of all, to be respectful. We challenge them to be responsible, and then restraint. I love the way PM Forney talks about restraint. He talks about restraint as the inner designated driver. And so for me, in terms of dealing with freshman students, it's just too easy to use that to say when you're at a party and your inhibitions are down, then you are no longer in charge of yourself. Turn yourself over to your restraint and allow the restraint to be your inner designated driver. When you want to talk, when I am talking, and in my class I have 100 students, so I'm somewhat like Daryl. I'm not quite like either of these two Daryls. I mean, they each are kind of, hammered. But we have those same kinds of rules that we established that are all aspects of restraint. Or all aspects of respect. And we say, early is on time, and on time is late, and late is rude and uncivil. And so and as leaders, you don't arrive late. With 100 people in the class, I said we cannot tolerate side conversation. So the moment that someone steps to the podium, whether it's me or my co-coordinator or one of the class members, all side conversations must stop immediately. And what I found in dealing with my class is that if I am willing to embarrass them the first week or so of class and be real definite about it and not allow anyone or any cute, any funny joke, to allow no exceptions, we will go through the semester and have a wonderful time. When I tried to be collegial with my classes and, you are adults and I'm going to treat you as adults and, we're treating you as adults and FERPA protects you as an adult, and whenever I tried that, it just doesn't work. And so I find myself having to really treat them as the adolescents that we,
13th graders.
the 13th graders that we know them to be. Just 3 months before they walk into my class, there was a roll that was being taken, and they talked to hall. And so we expect something magical to happen, over that summer, and it just doesn't always happen. So I've learned if I can just be a little definite about that in front of. I also want to say, and Dean McGee really should share this. In terms of, Dean, why don't you share? Just take a moment and share that. So you'll just in case they ask a question, you'll be.
Well, I took a look at our stats as far as the actual class disruption cases. That meaning the formal cases, the incidents that actually went through our office. In 2007, we had 6 cases. In 2008, 3. 2009, 1. 2010, and this is academic year, 6.
Huh.
So I didn't check this year. I should have checked so far. But that's where we are. And we do know there are some issues going on. But last year, we were back up to our 6 actual classroom disruption violations.
Hi, I'm Julian Merivale. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Speech Communication. I teach courses in interpersonal communication, so I essentially teach students to interact well with other people, to engage in positive communication. I also teach courses in ethics. So I teach the course with kind of a virtue perspective. So we spend an entire semester talking about things like justice and gentleness and other virtues. So it's kind of fun to be here, obviously. It's very interesting. I think it's getting looser going this way. I don't know how to put it. First of all, I can't even get my 3-year-old to do anything I want him to do. I don't know how I get to teach 30 students to do anything I want them to do. The first thing I do basically is I come into a class and I show them a video of me doing martial arts, like breaking boards, stuff. I think that really helps. That's a joke.
He is a black belt, though.
I am a black belt. I guess that helps. A couple of comments that become very interesting is, for example, I don't, if students are misbehaving, I try not to do it in public. I actually always talk to people individually after class. It's a very interesting balance, I think, that we have to negotiate between kind of being able to discipline them while avoiding to take a parent role, because the teacher role is a different role than the parent role. Although it embodies some principles of parenting, it also embodies other principles that I think are more important. So, and then the second part is, I heard a couple comments about conversations happening in the classroom. I teach an interpersonal class. So where I'm trying to get them to foster human relationships, genuine, authentic, real, huggable relationships. And so you can imagine the challenge, right, of them engaging in conversations when that's precisely what I'm trying to get them to do, right? Go home, talk to people, engage with them, have real stuff happen between you and the people you love and care about. And so it becomes kind of a dilemma, right, between hey, you guys are talking, you're building relationships, that's not working. You should be building a relationship with me. I am the relationship right now. And so I think, maybe using a humor can help. But I have faced a situation that I hope I can share with a student not too long ago that probably broke the norm of my expectations about what happens in terms of disruptions. I was teaching a class, and typically we have a lockable door, and so nobody can enter in until I let them in, so I get to make a lot of jokes about lateness and things like that. And a student goes to open the door, and the student walks in, and I see her, and immediately I couldn't remember, but it had been a long time since I had seen this student, and she said, I need to talk to you right now. And I said, well, I'm teaching. As you can see, I'm happy. And that's a good sign that I'm teaching. I'm teaching, I can talk to you after class. Students make lots of mistakes, right? Sometimes they think they need you right away. Their minds get kind of caught up, and so you're thinking, yeah, I'll just tell her, later on that she needs to wait. So she went outside and she waited, and so I came out of my office, out of the classroom, and I interacted with the student. And on the way to my office, I said, the next time, make an appointment with me, or wait until I'm done teaching, because I really need to focus my attention on my students. That's inappropriate for you to break into the classroom. So we go into the classroom, and then she tries to shut the door of my office, and I said, well, let's just keep the door open. It's kind of suddenly the cues are coming. Did you see my martial art black belt? Which is in my office, right? And so then we move in my office, and I reopen the door, obviously a little bit. She sits down. She's still listening to music a little bit. And I think at some point she told me to sit down, so I think I told her she ordered me to sit down, but I think I just ignored it. I said, tell me what's going on. How can I help you? Okay? Because I believe ultimately that empathy, listening to students, interacting with them, responding to them, and being attentive to them, these are the things that are really going to help the situation. If I become angry in any way, I am not teaching them to respond well to situations. You can't expect them to do things that you can't do yourself. So I basically said, what's going on? What's going on with you? And she said, well, I got to be in your class. This was over a B. I got to be in your class, and you refuse to help me. And so now I'm here to tell you, she was standing up, I'm now here to tell you that I'm going to make sure you lose everything in your life. You're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your wife, you're going to lose your son, you're going to lose everything. And so I stopped, I stood up, and I said to her, I can no longer participate in this conversation. I need to go find somebody who can participate in this conversation for it to continue, because it's not going well. So I stood up, she told me to sit down. I said, no, I'm going to go get someone so that we can have another person there. Once again, I can't get angry with her. It's precisely what she wants me to do. And so I went to get a person that works in the office. I was calling Lashonda, our wonderful administrative assistant. I'm such awful when I call people and come into this evil situation. And so I said, Lashonda, and so then Lashonda came around, and then the student left. And so this was the situation that I was confronted with this semester. So those are the things that I have to say to introduce the topic, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay. We have some questions that we sent out to the panel to get started on the conversation. And I'll start with those because you had a chance to think about it. Did you get them? I won't embarrass you. Okay. The first one is fairly long. But I think it touches on a lot of these issues that have come up, so I think it's a good one to start with. So bear with me, it's a long question. This has to do with reporting to the Dean of Students and dealing with disruptions as well. And there are a lot of questions embedded in this. What level of disruptions do we report to the Dean of Students, and what levels do we merely handle in class and not report? Yesterday, I sent 2 students out of class for repeatedly talking, several days a semester, and handing back and forth a speeding ticket one of them got this semester. When I told a student that wasn't an appropriate classroom discussion, and talking with other students, handing around a speeding ticket, the topic, they became defensive and argued with me, coming after class to do so, and all the other students had gone and I was packing up. I've reported one of the students before to the Dean of Students for talking to himself, laughing out loud several times during class, then saying it's about something other than class material, talking about court dates, speeding tickets with another student. The student accuses me of being prejudiced. That office, I think this person means the Dean of Student office, tells me they wait until the second offense to do anything. So how bad does it have to escalate to for the Dean of Students to do anything about it? Normally I like to handle my own small issues, but when I get to the level of reporting someone, I'd like an intervention of some kind. Does somebody want to start?
I guess that would be the Dean of Students.
Would make sense.
Number one, I think I've already answered the first question, what level of reporting. It is up to the faculty members to make that determination. You all determine what is disruptive. Even at that point, there's an action that the faculty member must take. If the behavior, and I want to highlight behavior, is offensive or disruptive, you must eject that student. Now, if I can't recall this situation there, but the second offense, that is embedded within your own policy. You know, you have 1 ejection, you have 2 ejections, and then upon the second or third, that's when you actually file a complaint. And I always encourage faculty members to go ahead and let me know what's going on in the classroom, and at that point, I can intervene, and what I call a mediation. I can mediate the situation, and oftentimes I call the student in and making sure the student understands this behavior is not appropriate, and if the student have some form of complaint as far as, you know, some kind of discrimination, we outline exactly what process that you can go and take in order to resolve this issue. If there is a primary issue with the faculty member and that faculty member is being charged and challenged in that manner, the student really should be dismissed from the class for that day. And so there's a long process of classroom disruption. But if that faculty member has submitted a written incident report, the student probably would have been charged with inappropriate behavior, more than likely disrespect to authority. Now, it may not have reached the point of being classroom disruptive per the policy, but there are other, violations that we can follow.
In your opening remarks, I think a lot of you talked a little bit about dealing with the kind of situation that came up. Anything else that you'd like to say with regard to what this particular scenario?
Can I say there's a hint in the query that Daryl's just not acting quickly enough. And I want to come to his defense because I've encountered this not only with behavioral problems but charges of academic offense. I hear all the time plagiarism is absolutely rampant. Do you know how many formal cases we get? And faculty complain and complain and complain, but they won't do the formal form. And so the student keeps repeating the behavior and repeating the behavior and repeating behavior, and maybe the 4th time around, the faculty does the official form. But from Daryl's point of view, the others don't exist. And you know enough about bureaucracy and due process, right? you can say, well, I heard the person down the hall, they had this person, they were cheating on them. And I know somebody clear over in EIT, and they had the same student, and they said they were cheating too. Doesn't exist. He doesn't have the formal complaint. He can't do anything. If he has the fourth formal complaint, he can do something, right? But until then it's, well, this is the first instance and all that. Now I know that's a different area. That's not behavioral. That's academic offense. But in my college that I'm departing, I've always tried to tell people, take the time. It's not that onerous. And I think it's the same thing with behavioral. Now, I say, yo, you talk. I don't eject the person, but it's like, okay, next time you will be ejected. And if I do throw him out, then I'll file a form. Because then the second time, he can do something. He can do something about it. But if you don't follow the procedure, his hands are tied. And I mean, I've come across this in various ways. There's this kind of impatience with the dean of students. Well, they just don't ever do anything. Well, I mean, I can tell you who's going to be on the front line if we go to court. Because they're responsible for ensuring that due process is followed. So he's got to abide by this. So you've got to give him something to work with. So I just heard a little bit under there. I should just call him up, and Daryl, my other brother Daryl, should walk in and say, do something on the spot, and he can't.
Well, let me just ask. Academic misconduct, there is, I would think, evidence of some kind. But in these behavioral things, it's kind of he said, or she said, he said, kind of. So
it's the standard is more likely than not.
Okay.
It's preponderance of evidence. Is it more likely that the student committed this offense or not? So if you file a complaint as the faculty member said that student is disruptive, then guess what? That student is disruptive per our policy.
But that has to be, that particular behavior should be banned in my syllabus? Is that
well,
true?
Behavior expectations, and I think that's what Dr. Rice was referring to. It is not, and unfortunately we are to that point if you have to kind of outline what's your behavior expectations for the classroom.
Right.
A lot of faculty members I know will embed in their syllabus, since it's now electronic, a link to the Dean of Students office where they go directly to the student handbook. But you can embed within your faculty syllabus these other behaviors I do not expect. Right here we had Dr. Rice, and we had another faculty member in the back that said, well, leaving class doesn't matter, leaving class. Well, if that's the case, make sure you outline the expectation of behavior.
But I was a party to a situation with a faculty member in my department that we oversaw. It was something that wasn't in the syllabus. I mean, it was, threats. I mean, and most of us don't say, don't threaten me on our syllabus.
Well, that's why every student follows and must follow, and regardless if they've seen this handbook or not, it is the behavior code. And they are responsible to follow.
And they did place a heavy emphasis on the faculty members' accounting of things.
Yeah, if you
But
follow...
due process to the student, I was actually pretty impressed with.
Well, let me just highlight, when you're talking about time, reading from, we can just lay this foundation. In the handbook, faculty or student.
What page is that?
This is page 97 in the student. It says, if a student has been ejected 2 or more times, the faculty member should follow these steps. I'm just going to highlight. Faculty member should notify the student in writing that he or she is in violation of the University Behavior Code. And at that point, the student has 3 class days to meet with the faculty member. Okay, the student and the faculty meet. If it's not resolved there, because now we're talking about administrative withdrawing the student. After that meeting, if it's not resolved, the student will have 3 class days to meet with the chair of that department. And if it's not resolved, and from a student standpoint, the student will have 3 class days to file an appeal to the Behavior Standards Committee. Now, 3, 6, 9. That's after the second ejection. Now, when the student make it to the Behavior Standards Committee, either they found responsible, that means they will be administratively drunk. At that point, or the student does not appeal to the Behavior Standards Committee. There's a couple of instances when an appeal is to the Behavior Standards Committee. The faculty member has several days or 3 days to notify the dean of students that this action has taken place, and the sooner the better. And that way we will notify the student and tell them, you have 3 class days to get here in order for you can understand your rights to file this appeal with the Behavior Standards Committee. But if the student chooses not to, at that point we will withdraw the student administratively after we have been notified by you and your department that you have followed that due process. That's a lot of days after the second ejection. And I know it may sound harsh to go, well, this behavior is not appropriate, and yes, you give people warnings, please let's not do that. We want to do that. Oh, please, that classroom management thing, However, if it's to the point, it is very disruptive to you, and you cannot teach, eject that student. I guarantee you, it will solve some issues in your classroom. Okay? And several people. So let's follow the procedure. It may sound harsh, but you see we have a lot of days of due process. Yeah.
A really quick, I don't want to open a can of worms, but a quick point of information. Are those standards applied also for online misconduct? Or are you guys in the process of developing separate standards for that?
That's actually a good question. They do apply at this point to online students because there's a lot of conversation, emails, and if you feel like the behavior is disruptive to the flow of information, yes, you can eject that student. Say, please, you are to log off. Now, I do recognize that there should be some work done in that area to really specify how to do that on an online situation. So we need to move and work on that.
I have a follow-up question. Is there a first-time ejection that would rise to the level that it would be reported to the dean student's office?
Correct? And let me highlight this. If you ask a student to leave the classroom and that student refuses, a faculty member can call the police or dismiss the class. At the point that you dismiss this class, that student goes from classroom disruption to university disruption, which you automatically is suspended.
Becomes a behavioral issue.
It definitely is a behavioral issue. Classroom disruption, one ejection, one class period, to university disruption, to interrupting a university function, which in some instances is against the law.
So you're kind of going back and forth between the academic issues and behavioral issues. And at the point that it becomes the academic side, you note that the process is very respectful of the faculty person and the faculty person maintaining management and control of their classroom. The moment that it becomes a behavioral issue, then it becomes our business. And then we can get involved in a much different way, much earlier in the process. Is that correct, Dan? I don't want to overstate that.
Classroom disruption is behavior, but it is controlled by the faculty member. If you were in high school, you probably would send the student to the principal office. You don't have a principal office. I'm not the principal. I'm sorry.
It's always the vice principal.
But in many instances, you can use me. I can be the mean guy, but you can also manage your class. In that, it's set up to give you that respect.
If it's a threat, by the way,
yes.
if it's a physical threat,
yes.
don't bother to look up page 97. Call your chair, call your dean's office, call Daryl. If there's a physical threat, then you need to get
What about a verbal threat? As a female, it's very different than being a guy.
Is it a verbal threat in what way?
Well, I just bring that up. I mean, physical threat,
The case
obviously.
that I'm talking about, it was adjudicated, it was a verbal threat.
Right.
But if there's a verbal, physical threat, then it is
Physical harm.
I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah, that's a physical abuse. That's a physical abuse.
But, what if it's something like, a student sitting in, and I heard about this that happened last semester, even maybe after the semester was over, it was a female student who said, well, you just wait till we fill out the forms on you or something. So it's not really a physical threat.
You talking about the evaluation?
Yeah, I
forms?
think it was the evaluation.
See, inappropriate.
It's not a physical,
Yeah,
no,
but
it
that's a
wasn't
verbal-
physical threat, but I will tell you that
That's a
this
violation
person
of the
felt
student code.
very
Verbal abuse.
threatened by that comment from this student.
You said it's a violation of?
It's a violation of the student code. It's called verbal abuse.
Verbal abuse,
Mhm.
okay.
Oh, okay. You have a question?
Couple comments. I agree and disagree with some of the things the panel was saying. I've been here 28 years. Only twice have I had what I would call civility issues. And I'm on Julian's end of the continuum. Both times I didn't call the student out in class. Both times I asked the student to talk to me alone, because I think there are serious base issues when you do that. I think it makes the situation worse to call out a student in front of the peers. But I think that I really agree with this idea of the syllabus is a kind of contract.
Yeah.
That means that I have obligations and the students have obligations. I'll try to make that as clear as possible. I actually have the students sign their syllabus as this quote contract. And then 2 times I did have to talk to the student outside of class. I just evoked the contract, and they said, "You're right, fine." And it worked out just great. So I think that syllabus can be really important. And I really agree with Julian saying about take the student side, because I think the base issues are so good.
Yeah, and I've gone from a whole long list of things to two. So I want to look at the civility thing, because I've called it be courteous and take responsibility. Because they know it.
Okay, I'll back down. I'm always tough for the first grade. When I do, I refuse though. I'm 10 minutes into the class and I gotta tolerate this for another 50 minutes. Sorry, student's gonna lose. I am not gonna wait for 50 minutes and have that student ruin an entire class. If it means calling out in public, then I'll do it.
No, I called them out in private. Both times I said,
"No, Johnny, come out in the hall."
I done that. Both times it happened, I said, "Can we talk in the hall?"
Oh, yeah.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
Every student has a contract. They have a behavior contract. It's called the student handbook. We invite every student to orientation. And right now they should attend. And during orientation, they do have, they receive a manner in which they can access the student handbook. So every student has that kind. So, yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I was just thinking about is I studied people who called behavioral instructors. So these are people who work with adolescents that have had a very difficult childhood, very often kind of dramatic childhood, and as well, kind of they use certain communicative strategies to try to manage their behaviors. And one of the things that I learned from studying that I thought was really interesting is the first thing they were actually taught as behavioral instructors was to always be the role model. So it sounds really easy, but really they have kids that come at them and sometimes spit at them, but doesn't matter what level of violence the child is using, they can never engage in that behavior whatsoever, which I found really admirable actually. And the second thing that I noticed is that they were taught to always see the positive in what the child was doing. So before they even taught them to discipline, they actually taught the behavioral instructors to look at students in a new way, so to look at what they were doing that were positive. So maybe you can look at a student being late, but then you can think about it as he's here. He's not doing, I joke with my students and I tell them, I said, when you're in class, you're not doing drugs, right? It's just so obvious. But you think that'd be very
Maybe that's why they're there.
But with our student population, and with many students transferring in and adult students, oftentimes they do leave their jobs and rush over. So it could be traffic issues, it could be a babysitting issue, it could be a child sick, they're not as focused, but they did make it. And that may be something that you really have to take into consideration of what you're doing, because we really are not, unfortunately, in a K through 12 situation. We are dealing with adults.
And there are also, there's also research, particularly to our student population, where a lot of the students feel like they're committing cultural suicide. This is on a book on teaching that you can look into, where a lot of the students that come and join the university, particularly if they don't have a history of their parents going to college, they feel like imposters, so they feel like they don't belong here, that they can't understand. And so even showing up for class, I believe, is really an act of courage for them, because they come to do something that their parents, they go home and their friends make fun of them. They say, what are you doing, big college boy? Who do you think you are? And so those stories are very real. So I'm not saying that lateness is not important, because
You're getting all over my toes. You're all over my toes.
I think being on time is very important. I do talk to students about it. I'm taking students to Paris, so being on time is, if you can't be on time, you can miss your plane.
Well,
But I think there's something.
disciplinary, we happy to.
So anyway, this is good idea.
Wants to go with you. Wants to go with you.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they can definitely come because they all love being on time. So I just thought about something about seeing the positive rather than negative. We talked about behaviors, from the instructor. Like even in the story that you read, right? I mean, at one point she writes, "I have reported with the students before the dean of students for talking to himself." It's sometimes I think instructors can also overreact to these situations. I'm not saying we do always, but sometimes we obviously react justifiably. But that faculty members do play a role in these encounters sometimes. And then the second thing that I learned from these behavioral instructors was interpreting generously. So they understand that these are kids that have had a really difficult time, a difficult history, so the behavioral instructors say, well, they're learning to do this, right? So they're in the moment of kind of learning to do something that they've never done, maybe. So even being late, sorry, I know I'm thinking on that, but like for some students, they've never been on time. This is just a hard learning for them. And so I'm not suggesting there should be no laws. I do talk about lateness, but those are some things that came to mind from the behavioral instructors.
Well, I wanted to say, when I talk about respect, that I certainly agree with you, that the respect goes both ways. Is that you got a role model respect.
Exactly.
And I think that's especially true with Harvell and McGee and I. We talk about in terms of dealing with the population that we deal with, students who are coming fresh out of the hip-hop culture. I mean, they will demand respect. But then we have to earn the respect from them. So they expect they expect to be treated instantly with the highest level of respect when they enter the institution. But they don't necessarily feel that they have to give it. And it must be earned, and it's got to be earned on a day-to-day basis.
And they don't have to earn it.
And they don't have to earn it.
Why?
No,
And why is that?
because they're human beings, and you should treat them like a human being. And,
But
you're
we're
gonna treat
not
them
as
like
an
this.
instructor. I mean, that's just that,
Well,
we're coming out of that culture.
Exactly. So we got that issue working.
Yeah.
But here's where my challenge is with you. Because the student is, because we understand that the culture out of which those students are coming. And then when I'm talking about the culture, I'm not talking about black culture or white culture. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about hip hop culture, the pervasive culture, of the Generation X. I think we have a real responsibility to those students. Nikki Giovanni, I had her when I was down at TCU, and she lectured, and it was an interesting setup. So Nikki Giovanni comes to the TCU, and she's lecturing. Most of the students there, upper middle class white students. But there's this group of African American students that have been brought up from one of the high schools in town. And so she's giving us, this Nikki Giovanni lecture, and then she pauses in the lecture, in the midst of her lecture, turns her attention to this group of African American students, and she starts to talk about, what it means to be African American, and the challenge. And she starts talking about these things that you talked about in terms of, being accepted and being smart and being people putting you down. And then she says, we pay a lot of money for you to go to college, for you to have this opportunity, for you to get this education. We pay a lot of money for you to be shaped and changed to be a different person, because we believe in you. And then she looks at this audience and she says, "Change, damn it." And I was struck by that moment, because that's really what we bring persons to this campus who don't know how to be on time. They don't know how to dress. They're wearing their pants down to their ankles, showing off their expensive underwear. But we have a responsibility, and we cannot abrogate our responsibility. And I don't want to say hide behind music. I don't mean that, but and to stand behind this notion of allowing them to discover. There's some things that need to change now. You cannot talk out loud like that about women. I don't want you to even think like that. But there are some things you cannot say out loud. If you say them, then then you will get to meet Mean Bean McGee. There are certain ways that you dress that no, leave your pajamas at home. You know, don't wear them just to the side. I mean, not that I can have any control of that, but the reality is that we have to challenge that behavior, and I think it's our responsibility. I don't think we can say, be yourself.
It
You
is,
know,
but
be yourself.
I actually think we're both agree because I believe it's our responsibility to do it. The question is how do you get students to change?
Okay, yeah.
right,
And so I think that the strategies for
Different
getting it
approach.
right
Yeah.
is what's the challenge. So, you can tell a dog to stop barking all day long, but, so at some point, and just imagine the first day even, when these students go all to these classes, I bet $100 that they go to all the classes, all they hear about, be on time, be on time, be on time. This is your responsibility, right? Professor A, Professor B, Professor C. So they get these messages, all day long. I think the research in persuasion shows that the strongest way to change a person is modeling. So
It's got to come from within. I mean, ultimately, that student has got to want to do it.
yes.
And the motivator is going to either be something inside or something outside,
You sure there's not a third way there? I'm just questioning. Inside, outside, on the wall?
I teach in a graduate program, and I've only had one really behavioral problem, in as long as I've been teaching, which has been about 9 years, 9.5. As part of my teaching, what I tell my students, what I'm
Now,
trying
some
to
of
do
the,
is,
just stopping the girl from leaving early, or did we?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yo!
Daryl, I have
I'm sorry, Rick.
I already got position.
He's not finished.
He was making a point. I was being rude and uncivil.
well, that's okay. But I had one situation that I don't think anybody on our faculty knew how to handle, and I'm asking for input. I challenge my students that I'm going to try and complicate their thinking on a lot of issues and a lot of in organizational behavior, on the history of higher education, and other courses I teach. But this particular student really wanted everything to be black and white. Wanted to just be presented with the material. This is it. And this individual verbally assaulted me multiple times in multiple classes, saying that I didn't know what I was talking about because I was trying to get them to think critically about certain issues and those sorts of things. And basically, I didn't really know how to handle it because it was so abrupt. And it got to the point where the students were calling this person by name and saying, "Oh, calm down," just this sort of thing. But nobody on my faculty had ever filed a complaint against this individual, and it had happened in multiple classes. So I'm not quite sure how you go about when it's just so abrupt and so in your face. How do you? I mean, in order to maintain civility, I just didn't say anything for a minute. I just stopped because I felt my cork about to pop, and I just stopped. And that's when the other students sort of said, "Now, calm down, just sit, and you just wait a minute. It'll be explained or whatever." So how do you handle that? I mean, that's what I consider classroom disruption, when you're basically verbally assaulted, very very confrontationally, and what do you do in a situation like that?
Daryl, you need to leave. Do you want to try to answer that? Did you get James in there?
Barely.
Well, I've had students, basically, you don't know what you're talking about. I've had students do that.
But very loud and very in your face.
I had that student.
There are a couple of ways to
I pulled
handle
them
it.
in a conference afterwards and tried to find out what's the root of what's going on here. I don't understand this. Of course, that person I found out later was they weren't taking their medications, basically. I mean, but I did sort of discover that from
And that's the scary part, it's never really done.
Charles, did you want to say something?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways to handle it, in my opinion. Not only are we in the Dean of Students Office and Educational Student Services advocates for students, we're also advocates for faculty and staff. If you have an issue that you do not understand, bring it to our attention. We can easily sit down and talk with you about some possible strategies. In your case, because you allowed it to go on and the other faculty members allowed it to go on, the student felt it was okay, but it could have been stopped immediately by at least coming and trying to seek some advice. Often when you go to your deans and your chairpersons, they may not have the information as well. We are the ones who understand behavior in students. And remember, we have a very, very diverse population. We're no longer dealing with that homogeneous population that is traditional age. They bring lots of baggage with them. And it's our responsibility to try to understand what that baggage is. Now, many campuses will have civility statements for the campus. Many campuses will have attendance policies. You, as faculty, decide how you want your rules and regulations written. What we're dealing with was written many, many years ago. We have revised it by bringing experts in, by going for formal training annually to deal with these issues. We've never lost a case in court. We've always resolved the issues that came to us, maybe not as rapidly as you would like, but it's because of the time frame that you set on the process. So from my vantage point as your Vice Chancellor, we've got to be aware of the environment that we're in, the constituents that we're dealing with, and be willing to change based on what is needed to best serve students, faculty, and staff. And I'll end my conversation with you by thanking you for giving us an opportunity to come and share today. For years and years, we asked for opportunities to do just this. We've been given 5 minutes, 3 minutes at new faculty orientation, which is not enough. This should be an ongoing conversation. And I ask you in the academy to please give us that opportunity.
I have a scenario.
One more comment about this situation, that when we have graduate students who are presenting a problem, we have a conference with them, and the faculty will identify the issues that we see. We allow them to look at that ahead of time. They can respond to that, and then we develop a plan of action. And, it seems to me that anybody in a graduate program, if they are dead set on having black-white answers, then perhaps they're not in the place they need to be. And we have made that suggestion to students as well. So,
yeah, it's okay to kick them out.
Absolutely. Audiology.
What are the ramifications of saying to a student after class in a private conversation, are you having some other kinds of issues besides academic or differences with me? And trying to bring out, maybe they'll tell you about something so that you could understand why they're so stressed out.
Or you could even make it just a broader question in general, to say, I'm just curious of what's going on with you. It seems like you're distracted, it seems like this. Can you help me out with this? What's going on?
Right. So where is the dividing line between doing that and then being accused by the student of doing counseling? And I did have a conversation with the university attorney that said, do not say the words mental illness, emotional disturbance. Do not say those words, even if you think it. So, our hands are tied a little bit. And just handle so that those topics, if you would. I mean, what have you seen? What trouble could we get into inviting out the problems?
Well, let me start with FERPA. And you are protected in that private conversation. Where initially you thought you were going is, I mean, if you had that same conversation in a public way,
No.
then
No, we do that.
certainly you've violated the student's right to privacy. But in a private conversation with that student, when you are attempting to assist that student, then I think you have much greater leeway, except you become a bit vulnerable in terms of how that student might interpret your conversation. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would encourage any faculty, staff to really get to know their student. And if there is an issue, I think it's appropriate that you have that conversation. I think when the handbook, faculty handbook indicates that when you eject the student must meet with the faculty member. I think that was the reason, to try to figure out, is there issues here and there's a way that we can resolve them, and do we need to refer you on to our counseling department or help you in any kind of way? Because we want the success of the student, is the foremost. So having that conversation is appropriate, I think. But
and don't go beyond your skill set.
You cannot. Yeah, you want to make sure, and the conversation with our legal, we cannot make assessments about a person's mental state or status because we are not qualified to do so in many instances.
Your training.
Right.
Do not go beyond your training. And you may be a wonderful mathematician, but if you're not trained as a psychologist and licensed psychologist, don't go there. We do have people on campus that are trained that the students are paid for. So
Who?
I got a
Who's our referral for that? If we know that a student's really stressed out, we think it may be more than that.
I typically take the hand of my student and walk them over to the 4th floor of Ross Hall to the Department of Counseling and stand there as they make the counseling appointment.
Got it.
Now from that point, I get no further information about what's happening except that student says to me what's happening. But on several occasions, I walk the student there to the door, into the office, and stand there with them as they make their counseling appointment.
But you can't force them.
No.
To the counseling appointment.
You also have one problem that I encounter, and some of the people here, some of these departments aren't open after 5 o'clock. What if your situation is regularly occurring at 8 o'clock at night? I'm in a very unique situation that I'm not in a classroom. My classroom is a 5-story building, and I have a couple questions that come out of the situation in the library that, I'll wait my turn on that. But I can't get to the counseling center when the student is on campus.
At that point, you should, if the behavior is to the point where it's been disruptive, you should call campus police. Because it may not, campus police is here for our campus safety as well. So it's not all law. And if it does not reach that point, then they will be referred to the office of the dean of students, and then we will meet the student, we will call the student in. At that point, if we think that there may be appropriate for a counseling referral, we will ask the student to go to counseling. We'll do whatever we need to do to help the student out.
But even more important, you hit on a very interesting fact about our campus. We offer classes on over into the evening. We're in a metropolitan area, and we talk about being an urban campus with a diverse population, yet we behave in an 8 to 5 mentality. Maybe these offices should be open later to provide those services, but we're the ones who would decide that. And that means giving up something, which is going to be difficult. But it's our responsibility, if we're really truthful about wanting to meet the needs.
Dean McGee, I want to just think, Dr. Owens, I just want to explore now the library and the staff of the library have faculty rank.
The librarians have faculty rank. The rest of them are
all right.
staff.
So it's not a formal classroom.
It's considered a classroom.
Okay.
As I said, I have a couple of questions related to that, but you were trying to ask the
But
questions.
I want to ask something that's related to that was submitted here, because it's related to this issue of privacy and whatnot. Is there a way to be notified or find out when a particular student has a condition that's documented that could be disruptive, such as Asperger's?
No.
Am I thinking it's no, but is there?
only when the behavior.
I mean, if you're faculty
But
member,
you're still not
Well,
gonna
it
know
does-
that
it
they
does.
have
if you knew
it.
that somebody had Asperger's, then you might deal with it differently, or is that something disability?
Yes, on a need-to-know basis. You,
Right.
yes, at any point that you need
Right,
to know
yeah,
that
yeah.
information, then you can receive that information. If you,
But who do you ask?
well, if the student has Asperger's, the chances are they will have registered with the Disability Resource Center.
That's what.
And when you make that request, they then can make a determination as to whether or not you have a true need to know about that particular information. If a student has a learning disability and needs extra time on the test, you need to know.
Well, usually they don't tell you what the condition is, but they tell you ways to accommodate it.
So can we call them and just say, does this student have a condition that I need to be aware of in the classroom?
It is the student's responsibility, and the way we practice it here on this campus is that it is the student's responsibility to first inform you.
Okay, what if
But
they
can she
don't?
go to disability and say, I have a student in my class, this is going on, can I find out if there's?
Yeah, I don't know that would be the approach that you want to take. I wouldn't advise you to take that approach.
I think in the law would say that the student must self-identify. And then we will provide accommodation upon their request.
But what, I mean, so you're asking me to ask the student?
No.
That
No,
is-
what I'm saying,
Student
if the
has to
student wants
self-identify.
accommodation
You can't ask.
based on a disability, then that student must make that request. If student want accommodation based on behavior, then there must
Yeah,
be
but
some formal
I think
request.
this question was more if you as a faculty member are sort of suspicious, and
Right.
if you know in advance,
If somebody's making all kind of weird noises, they're totally respectful in class, and all of a sudden there's this loud noise that happens, and it stops. So it's not like it's a continual disruption, it's like a whoop thing that happens, and it gets everybody's attention, but then it's gone.
like Tourette's or
Something,
Asperger's
I don't know,
or
something like that. It's sort of like, I don't wanna ask a student, that'd be highly embarrassing,
Well-
even personally without everybody around.
Okay, let's, I wanna make sure this is very clear. The general rule of thumb is to focus on the behavior.
Right?
Focus on the behavior. If the behavior is inappropriate, then you report it as such.
So I pull the student aside after class alone and say,
That
I'm
whoop
kind of
was
concerned
inappropriate.
about this,
Yes.
okay.
Your
And
whooping
then they
in,
have the opportunity to tell me why.
yes, your
it's
whooping in class is inappropriate.
Okay,
You know, let's not let that occur again.
okay.
But
And
what
if
if they
it
put a
does,
condition
you
where
know.
that's not?
Then they can tell me, then they can tell me,
They
and
get
if
to
they don't
self-report.
tell me, at that point, then I can say,
Right.
I don't wanna hear it again. And if that happens again, then we can,
You may be ejected from class.
okay,
At that point, the student will have the opportunity to self-identify and request accommodations
okay,
or not.
okay.
I would be very concerned about a faculty member going on what might feel like appear, for lack of a better word, a witch hunt with a particular student.
No.
I'd
That's not
be
I
very,
think
and
this
I understand that's
question
not
is
what
the
you're talking about, but
opposite.
I'd
No,
be very
no,
concerned with
no,
you
no.
pursuing information
I
without those
would
students
like, I would
identifying.
like to be able to ignore the fact that the student is doing this because it's rare, well, it's not that rare, but it's immediate and then it's gone. It's not like it's happening all class, it happens once and then it's over and then we.
And so the
And
assessment,
I don't stop, I just keep going, but I know the students are respectful.
okay, so, but the classroom disruption
That's the
is based upon the faculty member.
Right.
Are you disrupted?
So,
It's
am
up
I
to you.
disrupted? No, but their attention is,
Okay, they're what?
their.
So the
attention-
classroom has been disrupted.
Yes.
Right. Do you make that assessment, so therefore you must act?
Okay, okay,
By saying this behavior is not acceptable, please stop.
okay.
But, I mean, I'm not the one who had the question, but what if it is something like Tourette's or something where they don't have control over it, and it's like, not that you want to embarrass a student, but, you know, it's like, we're gonna put up with this because, I mean, I think that's what
I
the
would
question
put
was
up
all
with it if
about.
I knew that there
If
was
you
a
knew
medical
that there
reason.
was this medical
And
reason
usually
for it.
they'll tell you, I
Yeah.
think several.
I think students will
They'll
self-identify.
Tell you
Yeah.
up front,
No, if you just say, you know, is there, they'll tell you.
you ask them after class.
Yeah,
and they're
okay.
fine.
They're
Well, we
usually
want our
real
students to
upfront
be
about it.
empowered.
Yeah,
And we want our students that live with disabilities
yeah.
to be empowered to manage it, because they're not going to be in a controlled environment like the classroom all their lives. They're going to be in situations where they will have to, they're negotiating a deal with China, and everyone needs to know in the room that there's something that may happen at some point. If I move,
Well, that's why I don't understand why they haven't told me. He hasn't told me. It would have helped. I don't know. I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have students that have medical conditions that they don't want to self-disclose because then they get labeled.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
that's,
okay.
yeah.
I guess that's true too.
I've got that too, not behavioral things, but still, they don't want.
Well, can I be mean, Dean McGee?
Sure.
Even if you have a disability, if it does not fulfill the behavior expectations, that is not, it will not exempt that student from the student code of conduct. We would do everything we can to accommodate, but if the behavior is so disruptive that it's interfering with other students learning within the classroom, it cannot be tolerated.
And I will say that Daryl has not allowed that. We had a situation with a student about 2 years ago in the library that I had to report because it was becoming a repeated process. He's taken that student aside, explained to them what the expectations are in the library, and the student came back to me and apologized. I'm not sure how he figured out it was me that called, except that it was probably because I was the liaison to his department. But he did come back and apologize, and we've had no further problems with that student.
Thank you.
Somebody submitted a scenario question here, and I think it's a request to how you would handle something without necessarily reporting it. A student clearly upset about receiving a failing grade on the midterm comes up to you after class and says he wants to retake it. You reply that as stated in the syllabus, there are no makeup exams. You also remind him of his party attendance record. He becomes angry, knocks your papers off the front table, and yells, "You're a terrible professor, the whole class hates you." How would you handle it?
You asking them, who happened to person?
Well, I'm asking the
I would wait for the incident report.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, do you just walk out?
I would think the faculty member at that point in time, that's pretty threatening.
No,
Yeah, yeah, whoa.
Knock the papers off.
Are you for, you might want to call campus police. And, or ask the student to leave. Leave now or you will be arrested. I am calling campus police. You know, I hate to say this, but those are the guys that carry that gun on the, you know. I don't.
Since you mentioned that, how many of you
That's
have
scary.
called?
Sorry, can I ask to run? And I'd like to hear from this end of the continuum.
Well, I don't want to be misunderstood. I mean, I have very tough conversations
Yeah.
with students, so I think that would be an example of when to have a tough conversation, particularly if there's some
Yeah,
documents that are being
exactly.
thrown in my face. I will not be aggressive with the student, though. I will describe the behavior, so the strategy that even the behavioral instructors use is to then never describe the personality of the student, but you always describe the behavior. So it's not the person that's the problem because they may be stressed out, they may have psychological problems, or they may just having family problems or a crisis. It's the behavior which is the problem. So I would try to describe the behavior that's being performed, call it that that's inappropriate, and it's going to be reported to the dean of students. So once again, I'm not being aggressive, I'm just reporting what's happening and what's going to happen in the future so that the student understands.
And the importance of doing that, now we have a history. You know, because there is a process we call crisis, we have a crisis intervention team. And if we have enough reports of a certain behavior, of course, we will pull together, you know, if the police get it, the dean of students receives it, the department head receives it, all of a sudden we have information that there may be an issue here, but we want the student to be successful.
We can start connecting
We
the
can
dots
start
at that
connecting
point.
the dots. But if no one fill out the incident report, there's no way we can connect the dots.
Sorry, Karen, I interrupted you because Julian had to.
No, that's fine, I understand.
And then on the back end, I want to say that if the student, you go through everything, because we just had a case here recently, there was perhaps an informal or whatever an incident that was reported, no action was taken, but when the student was found responsible for another incident, in the history of the student discipline that we can release at the point that student is found responsible, is there. And then when they go into their sanctioning phase, they have that information to rely upon.
But that's a classic case of what was described in the back earlier, is faculty had allowed certain sets of behavior to exist, and the person was more or less terrorizing the department, where perhaps one time would not have resulted in the person being separated from the institution or some severe, but once it starts to stack and you start to see these behaviors, and one of the things that we talked about earlier in terms of preparing for this, in the back of our heads are all these incidents that have happened around the country. And a part of what has not happened on some campuses is that a faculty person says, well, I knew about that, but I didn't. And when they get on the media, they're telling you everything that happened. And the Dean of Students Office or Education Student Services of those places are sitting there going, well, we didn't know what happened in the English department, and we didn't know what happened in the math class, and we didn't know what happened in the psych lab, So as you all have incidents, it really is to all of our benefits to report that information. I mean, this information, students are protected, and you can see we go to great lengths to protect students' due process rights. So the students will be protected. We're their advocates as well. And a part of our advocating for them is to maintain the standard within the community, maintain the code of student conduct across the community. And when we find a student who is, or I might say, having micro misbehaving around the campus, all of that may come together and become a macro issue. So,
is there a statute of limitations on that? I mean, what if, you think of something that happened, sometime this school year, whatever, and you're thinking, I really probably should have said something. Is that something that has to happen immediately, or is there a statute of limitations?
We would like for it to be as quickly as possible in order for the student behavior can be addressed. I do believe the faculty handbook indicates that we want to adjudicate the process as quickly as possible. I think that's the original intent of the days, 3 class days, and that kind of thing. It's difficult to adjudicate a process if you are in December, and when I receive the report, there's a chronological from August until now, and I therefore want this person ejected. The first step to change is an awareness of the need to change.
Can you make an incident report and just sort of, you don't want anything done, you just want it there?
Many times that has occurred. They say, I want to file it, but I want to just make sure there's an incident documented, but I will handle it. Many faculty members call and ask for advice, and I said, well, by all means, you can do these things, but I don't want to take action. But I do want to go ahead and document this incident.
And that's okay.
It would be in a file, but understand that it's not a true incident.
What does it mean? That was my question. The student has to be ejected from your class 2 times before it, and the first one has to be reported to you guys, and then the second time it's an incident. Is that? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, one thing I always encourage faculty is to do this. Upon your first ejection, let me know. Yeah. And we can get in there and we can, talk, because a lot of faculty members, this is 2011, quite frankly, and I don't want to say anything because y'all already accused this has been an all-men panel. But I'm not as timid as some people may be. I'm serious. And I'll just look at you and just tell you, you cannot behave in that manner. That is inappropriate.
Yes.
Like the pants hanging down. Yeah. I would see you walk through the students and say, excuse me, you need to pull your pants up. Well, you can't tell me, yes, I can.
We can.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you know what, Carol, we can, but there is no.
But my point being is that I believe in behavior expectations.
Yeah. So
once that occurs, and I do know you need to meet with the student, and all of the policy says that. But if you need a little help doing that, just let me know.
I'm gonna put you on my speed dial.
Man.
I only get 1 class with these students. I can't do 2 times. Right. Because in most cases, what I'm dealing with is someone else in this room has brought the class to the library.
Right. A single? But you mean a single meeting, not even a class?
Right. Well, no, it will be a full class period, but they're in my classroom within the library. So technically, it's my classroom. But I won't have another classroom situation situation, yet they have disrupted the only 50 minutes I get with their classmates.
Right, and at that point, the faculty member in charge of that class
Yeah.
should be checked.
And if they don't, this is a regular occurrence because their attitude is it's the library's classroom, it's your problem. Or in one case, they chose not to do something and the students were starting to comment. So I did throw the student out. That individual threatened to go to my department chair, that I had disrupted their class.
Well,
The instructor did? Yes.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I wish I were.
well, unfortunately, every class has one faculty member or co, and that is outlined. I understand your position, but I'm not necessarily saying that may be how other people may be interpreting it.
But what do we do then? I mean, basically it means that these students can abuse the librarians any way they want if they have a gutless classroom instructor.
Well, then just do what I did. I mean,
Well, I do. Don't worry about it. You know.
Well, no, but I mean, the instructor comes back and says, I'm going to your church, so what?
Yeah, I'd say that instructor did it.
I'd be going to the department chair then.
Right, that's
Yes,
right.
yeah.
But
And say, I think take
we get the runaround no matter what route we take. If somebody tells us to go somewhere else.
But you need to document
They're
it.
doing
Oh, don't worry.
none of the rest of us can hear it.
Okay.
Oh, gotta stop between just two people, so the rest of us can hear the solution.
So they can be civil, it should be.
Civility, oh, yes.
Okay, respect
Oh.
for other people in the classroom.
That's really interesting.
Tracy.
I want to bring it back to, I had an incident this semester with a student that I did not report. My first instinct is to try and deal with it myself. And usually if it's one that can potentially go anywhere, or get worse, like the first incident I had with that, if I think this might escalate in another class or something, my instinct is to email my department chair, hey, I'm just letting you know what happened today, and not go anywhere else with it. Am I wrong to do that? Because some of what I'm hearing, like the one incident this semester, the student was very upset after he took his final exam and didn't pass. And he didn't hit the wall or anything, but I could see he had so much anger. He held it in, and didn't do anything, and he ended up storming out of the office after not listening to anything I was saying. I just let him storm out. But it gave me the feeling that I know I don't want to meet him where nobody else is around again. And the next day he came back, he apologized and everything like that. And then luckily he passed the final, the second chance at it. But should I have, see now I'm thinking, should I have reported that? Even though nothing.
I think that's to your discretion. I think, number one, the behavior. He did hold it in.
Yeah.
He was angry, but he stormed out. He removed himself from the situation.
Yeah.
Some of those things are all good processes
And
for
see, that's
dealing
why
with your anger.
I don't wanna push something.
Right, and
that
then he
doesn't
came
need to
back
be
and
pushed.
It sounds like you managed to.
it sounded like you handled it very well, in my opinion.
Okay. But I guess I worry because of the behavior. If he does it for somebody else, who's gonna know? Except the person, it actually wasn't my department chair, it was a colleague that I did for that one, just to document it in an email. But should I be emailing that kind of thing to you, and could you keep track if you have these unofficial things in there?
Well, we'll create it. Now, let me make sure I highlight on the unofficial. There are incidents that we don't follow through, and if there's no formal disciplinary process at the end of the academic year, we will shred them.
Okay, so then you couldn't catch.
But I was saying also that you might interpret something as this issue over here, where the person was described as having knocked things off the desk, and if let's say the same thing happened to you, and you say, well, I'm just letting him cool off now. He knocked these things off the desk, and you send that to the dean of students' office. The fact that he knocked things off the desk may rise to the level of a violation of the code of student conduct. And so although you choose although you were saying, I don't want to deal with this, the behavior is such that we are obligated to deal with it. And there's it's kind of what, when I have my students, whenever we do the sexual harassment training with my students, it seems, it's interesting. Well, we do sexual harassment training, and it seems invariably I get a report of some behavior. And in the course of the training, I make it clear that when it is reported to me, with all due respect to you, I am not going to just listen to this informally. I'm not going to take it and put it in my file and think about it and I might deal with it. No, the moment that I get a complaint of sexual harassment, I am going to deal with it. It will be dealt with in some way. It may be adjudicated through the Dean of Students Office.
And when you talk about sexual harassment, I think that's correct.
It may be sent over to Human Resources, but it will be dealt with. So I just want to suggest that there are some things that may rise to a level that we are required to deal with those things.
Okay, back to the grade issue kind of thing. You know, students get upset sometimes, and you know they're upset, and they're very visibly upset with you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's going to happen after that. I mean, like, he could have stormed off and then cooled off and come back and apologize, or he could have stormed off and
hung up by your car.
yeah. And you don't know at that point whether it's going to go, which direction it's going to go. And it'd be nice to have some documentation for just in case. But then again, I mean, is it okay to document an email to somebody for in case it goes bad? Without, I mean, the only time you would need to know is if it actually goes off bad. If all he's doing is being upset and containing it.
I would say this, I would feel more comfortable if the documentation went to your chairperson and not just a colleague. Because of that way you damaging the reputation
Yeah, I
of
usually do.
Right.
That one I did because she had some dealings with him previously that kind of, we're sure it was.
Are you saying that's a way then of sort of documenting things, but we're
Yes.
not actually taking it to you by?
Because there's a
giving
need
it
to
our
know
chair?
and student privacy, further
Oh, yeah.
issues dealing with academic and behavior. It's two-sided, so you want to make sure you stay in that line. When you go to a colleague, did that colleague have a need to know?
And then I can't believe you did not say follow the procedures that stated in the student handbook and follow your handbook.
Yeah,
Follow the faculty handbook. The procedures are outlined, and we get into trouble. We, the university, we get into trouble when you start to try to be nice, or you start to create different ways of applying the faculty handbook. Follow it as it is written. And if you do, the students' rights are protected, your rights are protected. We're all better served if we follow the procedures that we've established.
But I will tell you historically, if the faculty member asks, I do not want to pursue this, I just want to document it just in case something else occurs. It's a red flag for us, because we're like, well, just in case, let's do something. Because then if something did occur, then what?
It's too late.
I have to, let me sue the Dean of Students Office because I did tell them, but I asked them just in case.
And we don't want to talk to everyone that is upset about a test. But if it rises to that level that you are concerned, then we're concerned.
Well, I think I'm in a little different situation because I'm the math coordinator for the developmental math, and so I'm the Alex person. And so actually, I deal with a lot of stuff. And I mean, one time a mother told me her son was bringing a gun to campus.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I reported it. It was a couple of years ago. Yeah. And so, I have been threatened. That's okay. No, that I went to public safety right away. I did all my reports, and it's like,
I don't have my guns well.
And so, I mean, I guess, this is terrible to say, I'm kind of, if something were to happen related to that class, it's going to happen to me. You know, just because I'm the focus, you know, for students, and a lot of the students in that class have mental problems, you know, so
That's
I
probably
worry
something
that
we don't wanna say unless we have an actual evaluation of it.
We have to focus, a lot of students in that classroom have had a display of behavior issues.
Okay.
So, and that may or may not be inappropriate, but I tell you, you do need to start documenting the inappropriate behavior, and that way they would know. Something that the library has done, they actually have a list of rules. I think it's prominently displayed of how you will behave within that lab, because your lab is a classroom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I deal with students who just need to blow off steam too. You know, and so sometimes it's hard to distinguish.
It's within your discretion.
Yeah, and that's.
But I'll be very careful with letting
really
people blow off
important.
steam. That's not, I don't know, unless,
But you.
sometimes I would tell students, if you need to yell, come in here and yell at me.
Do you have any guidelines for recognizing when something is very, is going to turn into something dangerous versus not?
Unfortunately,
That's one of the questions.
I don't have that,
But that's certainly something our counseling department,
Right.
yeah, that's something our counseling department can assist with.
And
Are you
I'll
gonna-
tell you something that happened that I think we need to just bring out if you don't mind. Okay? There is a chance of being killed. And Dr. John Locke, who was a friend of mine at the University of Arkansas Fayetteville, was killed in his own office by a student, an MFA student who had not been coming to class much and hadn't been turning in assignments and had been in and out, semesters on, semesters off. Finally, he came back and was spending more time, but he wasn't really turning in quality work. And my friend John was assigned to be the one to tell him he wasn't going to be in the MFA program any longer. Now, John had some kind of inkling about this because he left his will out on his dining room table with a note on top of the will that in case this is needed, here is my current will. Then he went to talk to the student. He was killed, shot several times. The student killed himself immediately afterwards. And those of us who were close to him have, that's burned in our brains. And as you know, I had a student follow me after the final and caused a big disturbance. I had to call the police after last semester, but yeah, that's going well. Going through the channels, everything's settling down, I think. And the student was suspended and whatnot. But I'm telling you, I thought about John while I was behind that men's bathroom door for 20 minutes with the student banging on it. And it's not funny, and these kids do have guns. I don't care what we think, what we see. There are guns in the backpacks. And I did not, the police didn't get there for 20 minutes. They were looking for him, but they didn't find him. So I don't know what happened, but that's a long time in my situation. And with male students. And I don't know, I just, can we carry pepper spray legally and use it if we're cornered?
I think pepper spray, yes.
I think pepper spray, the problem with pepper spray, as I understand it, is that most of us don't know how to use it, and so we end up spraying it on ourselves.
Well, that's a possibility, but if you practice, you can figure it out. So.
Let me just say in response to that, and that's why we're here today, and that's why, I hope with new faculty and as this kind of goes on, maybe once a semester we can grab a group of faculty and we, especially among adjunct faculty who are changing, it certainly would be good to have a conversation with the adjunct faculty as well. That we can be a part of helping to create the community standard. We talked early on about the proactive kind of things that we try to do with students when they come in. We try to say to them, this is how you're to behave among the community of learners. And you're to practice the 3 R's, and sometimes we'll say the 4 R's: respect, responsibility, restraint, and relationships. And we're trying to build that kind of community so that that kind of thing doesn't happen. But when it does, then we do have standards that are codified in our student handbook as well as in the faculty handbook that certainly we can rely on to help our community, help our students behave in a way that is acceptable within this environment. What is that? Behavior not becoming of, what is that standard?
Inappropriate behavior.
Yes, inappropriate.
Academic setting.
Inappropriate behavior, appropriate behavior in an academic setting. Juliana, are you going to deal with this question about in a dispute with the students, should teachers get their own attorneys or assume?
Well, we are now. Go for it. You want to read it
Well,
from you?
I just want us not to forget our graduate students who are teaching also, because we need to somehow get this stuff to them also, because I try and help them with their classroom management. And so in addition to...
It's something that as a teaching academy we've been thinking about.
Yeah.
I mean, we think of all of this as open to everybody, but we're thinking of some strategies to reach out to graduate assistants and to adjuncts.
And I will say this, if you have a group of graduate assistants or teacher assistants, you can always call, our office, and we will come do a workshop.
Yeah, I said this out to the grad students I work with about this. Okay, but,
But they may not feel...
Yeah, I know, it's kind of, it might be intimidating,
Yeah.
so I...
And the whole marketing thing, they may not have felt invited. They may have felt like this is for the faculty.
Yeah.
Not opposed to-
And we're trying to make sure, we're thinking of some strategies for next year to help them feel included. Do you want to read that question that
It
you're
says-
dying to answer?
Well, I'm not dying to answer it. I just didn't know if it would come in a dispute with the student. Should teachers get their own attorneys or assume that the UALR attorney in the room with a student hearing will sufficiently back them? And one of the things that we talk about, even within our roles in student services, and I would just share with you that I think it applies to faculty, is always be careful to act within your scope of responsibility and your scope of duties. And if you do, then you're protected by your job description and by the purpose for which you were hired. The times that we've gotten in trouble in student services, the times you get in trouble on the faculty side, is when you go outside of that scope of responsibilities. When you start to give, as a construction management faculty, you start to give diagnoses of schizophrenia, then you've gone outside of your purview. And then you decide, I'm going to discuss this with other person. As long as you're acting within your job and within your scope of responsibilities, it has been my experience that you will be protected. When you go outside of that, then you've gone outside of it. You've asked to be dealt with as someone who's doing something beyond what you were hired by the university to do.
Sometimes that's a gray line, so what you're really saying is get your own attorney.
I'm not saying that. In response to that question, I just wanted to just encourage all of us to behave within and to carry out our jobs within our scope of responsibilities, to stay within that, and to
Yes, but
not to be lone rangers, and vigilantes
I mean, oftentimes we think we are, and then we find out on the backside that, oops, I overstepped. I mean, that can happen as well. And
Well,
so-
like that question, is there something else going on? I mean, I might think of that as part of what I do as a teacher.
Right.
Right. Where's that in my job description?
Right.
Okay, now I got another, you brought up, I just thought of this. I have my answer. I'm reviewing a paper that is written for a construction management class, and I flunked it because its grammar's incorrect and all that. Is that going outside my area?
I wouldn't say so. No, you're teaching students to communicate and communicate in
Yeah,
real
but I'm not
work.
an English professor. How can I grade their grammar? Would I get in trouble doing that?
There was
No.
a discussion about this
Is there-
on
It's
Fed
not
Focus
legal.
several years ago, and you
That is
still
your,
have a
that's
right
your
to question.
responsibility.
Writing is part of that.
That's
That
your
was my
responsibility.
thoughts too, but I
Yes.
think
But you know, Logan, not everybody knows what due process is, or how, what composes due process necessarily. And it can be, a little bit difficult at times I think, for faculty who are not perhaps up to speed on what due process involves to know what to do next.
As we talked about this and talked about 2 hours in this conversation and what we would talk about, we spent quite a bit of time trying to narrow it down to just a few and pledging to one another that we would be disciplined, in this conversation because Greg, as you know, there's a whole class in this year. So you're absolutely right. We could do a whole series.
But therein lies part of the problem, right? Because there's a class in Greg's department, but this is what I do for a living. I never had that class.
Yeah.
I know a heck of a lot about hearing. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just...
But you know,
we talked about that very thing.
What we can do is rely on our faculty handbook, and I think it was last updated in 2000. The last one I
needs to be
could
done.
find. So it does outline the process, the procedural process of dealing with student behavior is due process. Due process can be as simple. I think the law really outlined students notified that their behavior is inappropriate and they have violated some form of code, and a hearing of some sort or administrative meeting. That is the simplest form of due process. But at the University of Arkansas Little Rock, it is well defined. You will do these things. And really, to make it simple, instead of saying due process, I just said follow university procedure. Is that okay? Dr. Bear? But that is
technically it's not, because you know what I mean.
Yes.
You have to, because if you're not following due process, then the student can,
right.
We can't hold them as accountable if we're not following due process.
That's following our procedure.
But the university
Right.
procedure is designed to be the due process,
Exactly.
to be due
It is,
process,
yes,
right?
it is. And
So
as
by
long-
his saying that, even though he's not using those words,
But as long as you follow due process, you will be protected by the
Yes.
university council.
Right.
So it behooves everybody to try to read
to
the faculty
read the
handbook
faculty
Yes.
handbook.
And
I know, that's
understand.
user is that
As far as
making, I know.
when you follow our policies,
You are following due process.
you are. Jeff Bell would be very happy, which is our legal.
Unless you're me, we were saying earlier that the classroom instructor has to deal with it. So I'm sitting there being abused in class with a
Well, I
gutless
think-
faculty member, and you're telling me
I don't
can't do
think you
anything.
have to be abused. I think you can remove yourself from that situation. If the faculty member do not want to carry out or say, "Oh, this is disruptive, please remove the student," then guess what?
Class is over, go back to your classroom.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I would agree with that, except for one thing. There are 25 other students in the room who just lost out on something that I'd be willing to bet that faculty member is never going to give them that other opportunity because they have now decided that I don't care about my job. And the whole situation that I came up with, my situation with that, was a graduate assistant. I will say that. And when I spoke to the person in charge of the graduate assistants in that department, they told me that I was overreacting.
I was going to say, did you go to the department chair or something?
But we are available. Let me just say, we're trying to figure out a nice way to say this. We are available to discuss with graduate assistants, adjunct faculty, these processes and procedures. You hire an adjunct professor who's good at something and you bring them on the campus and they don't know all of our rules and all of our ways. We are more than happy. In fact, we would prefer.
Yes.
We would welcome, we would ask for the opportunity to work with those adjunct faculty and those graduate assistants to help them to understand the policies and procedures, and to think through, in some instances, classroom management. I mean, because if they've not thought about it formally, we certainly can help them think about it formally.
I know every semester we get something that talks about the disability statement that we need to put in our syllabus and whatnot. Let me ask you guys, I mean, if at the beginning of a semester we got something from their office that says, think about putting this link in your syllabus.
How about at the end of the semester before we all do our syllabi?
Okay. But also the notion that, and don't forget to look at page whatever in the faculty handbook about dealing with disruptions. I mean, I'm just wondering what you think. If sort of a end of the semester, beginning of the semester, just reminder to faculty about that. Do you think that would help
It might help a little.
a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, because I think a lot of us forget that there's this.
I never thought about putting that on my syllabus.
Yeah.
My syllabus is 5 pages long. Had everything else in there.
However,
I mean, it's not
we
magic
cannot make
too,
the
but it's
assumption
something.
that you're gonna come to campus thinking that you know how to behave. I'm sorry. I want to say, oh, you're a well-behaved person, come on. But they don't know how to be. Actually, students come to campus thinking, oh, I'm grown now, I can do whatever I want.
What I would kind of like, and I haven't talked with my co-director here, but I'm wondering about a workshop next semester about sort of what I was asking you guys about, to come in and talk about a lot of ways that we can promote civility in the classroom. I mean, we're teaching our content, but you may have some ideas for
Workshop
us.
on classroom disruption, civility.
Yeah, but I mean, you talked about restraint and
we've tried,
responsibility, and then you may have some ideas about little things that we might be able to do in the classroom to help prevent some of these things from happening.
And I'm going to say this, and I hate to, we have tried, and we've gone with the big scale, everybody come, and then we've gone to, please invite us, the department heads, we will come. But when we went with the big setting, I think about, we even said, hey, we'll feed you lunch. We had about 10 people show up.
But
we
didn't have ATLE then.
Yeah.
We didn't have ATLE.
Didn't have ATLE then.
Because these people
Great
got
point.
medals and commendations and whatnot, so
But we are, I'm sure, the leaders, we're willing to do whatever, please. Because I like being proactive, not reactive.
You gotta keep reminding us too. It's not always on the forefront of our mind, but this just.
That's
hit us
always
at
the
the
end of
right
because
time.
we're reactive. Things bother you until we have a big problem.
And part of that is, I think every time something like this happens to me, I am shocked all over again.
yeah.
Exactly.
That a student would actually treat me that way, or, I would never have thought to do, and, so it's,
No, yes.
well,
But
I
a
mean,
lot
I'm
of
just
students
saying.
come with a Walmart mentality. I'm paying for this,
Right.
and I expect you to provide me with customer service.
And give me the grade of it.
Right.
Well, and
But
I have
also,
to say,
having been the world's oldest RA, going through my doctoral program, and working, and as a hall director with 595 freshmen, we would all be surprised how many folks really do have emotional issues. We can't call them that, but they actually do. And you think that all these kids are just normal, just sort of blowing off steam or whatever, but there are a number of students who do have emotional issues.
And you have parents that's been there for those students to protect them and intervene and all these policies, and then they get here.
First time that all of us exposed. And
Yes, and then a parent will come show, I want to meet with you. Well, no.
you have an adult.
You have an adult, I'm sorry. You can come with the student, and the student can get.
I don't want to scare people, but I mean, it's just a fact. There's a larger percentage of folks than we think who are actually have some behavioral and emotional difficulties.
Probably about 1 out of 5 of them.
I don't know that it's that many, but there are a lot.
But again, that's a conversation that we can have through ATLE with our council. There are probably several offices that we want to have as a part of that conversation. We want to have Disability Resource Center, the counseling and career planning, and health services. Since we have a full service health services office on campus, that may be another program that we'd like to do at some point.
And
Some
we're
of
going
it
to,
might be women.
Well, and I,
Well, some of them would be.
Well, I mean, that's
Two of the presenters would definitely be women.
And one thing that we're gonna do, starting in the fall, we're gonna, a little more emphasis on brand new faculty and expend that to adjuncts. And it might help to catch them early.
The adjunct, and it sounds like, I mean, we have the graduate assistants pretty captive, because it seems to me that as the director of the DSC, in my current real job, not the interim part, I get a lot of graduate assistants that come it seems like at about the same time. And
there may be an orientation for them to know what their benefits are in general, just one big orientation, and that might be a good time to have something like this.
Yeah. They come to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And as we said, we tried feeding them, so we would we really want to have the conversation.
It works with students, but it doesn't seem to work with faculty.
We want to have the conversation.
We're not all.
Speaking of feeding them, let me put my, as we conclude here, put my DSC hat back on and my contract administrator. We are partnering in the fall with ATLE. We're converting what is now Trojan Alley Meeting Room G. We're converting that back into a faculty lounge.
Wow.
And we will have a faculty meal plan. This area will become more like a cafeteria. So you'll swipe in, you'll pay $5 for breakfast, $7.50 for lunch, and you can put money on your campus card. Put $100, then we start giving you money. We give you $10 or 10% for every.
And then we say we don't pay tax too.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's one of the benefits of it. So,
And
that's a partnership that we have with ATLE, and yes, it's going to be for every day except one day. ATLE will be programming. We've been working on, not counseling, but we've been working on asking everyone else to move their events out of G, but we hadn't asked. Your dates are still on there, and the chancellor's dates are still on there.
What?
So
You're not making Joel change? Come on.
We'll talk to Joel.
But the idea is that it has to be, I'm sorry, but that money has to be spent. Okay? But the idea was that we don't have a place where faculty can hang out with each other. And I don't know how many of you were around in the deep dark ages when, before the current one, before D, but it was like long tables, and faculty felt that they could just go and sit, that they didn't have to make arrangements to sit at a little table, and that's what we're asking for again. And we're thinking of stuff like the co-directors of the academy might be there on one day, and we're looking into, seeing if the provost will come another day, so that faculty will connect with each other more, share these stories about how you deal with disruptions or promotions. So yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, and there's still cookies.
Those of you that haven't signed.
Chance for Kindles.
Got the Kindle that we've got to give away.
Is that all year? Everything all year that people attend?
No, this is semester. Each semester. We gave one away last semester.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, well done, man.
Are you involved? Is the campus involved with the
I just typed it.
What's your name?
Well, it has.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a script.
Hey, cookies for family. Take cookies to secretary.
You're right. And Logan said, Yeah, I mean, it was so funny. He was just, I was really why I got here. I mean, that's when he works. And you know, from the school district.
We're gonna have 2 more marches. So send me somehow, I can put something.
Yeah,